All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Tonight's book club, we're actually covering the Habits of Health book and getting into some really great stuff, which is chapter 1.1. We're kind of through the preface and the introduction. And this chapter is incredibly powerful, in my opinion, because it's all about how it's not our fault. So based on your guys' takeaways, we'll start with takeaways and then we'll transition into what are some things that we can implement to make sure that we are moving our health forward. So who wants to start? What are some of your takeaways from this element, or this chapter, I should say?
Just illustrates like what we're fighting against, like all this programming from back in the day. And I like that Dr. A addresses that in how we eat and also how we act. Like we'll get into in future elements about how we have this fight or flight when there's drama, that comes in. And it's just interesting. Like all of this stuff, we evolved for our survival to conserve energy and to eat a high nutrient stuff that was not readily available. And now that it's on every corner store, that's why we have this obesity epidemic.
Completely agree. Yeah, we'll start off with like page 41, and you touched on it a little bit too, Eric, where it was like 10,000 years ago, like this is how we were programmed, and we used our energy then to actually like find our food. And now it's like all about convenience, which has just made us a lot lazier, unfortunately. Any other takeaways from the first couple pages?
I thought it was interesting, and I know this, but on page 42, it says our bodies are programmed to hold on to calories for the sake of survival. And I know my old habit was to eat like once a day, thinking if I only eat once a day, I'm not putting that many calories in and I'm going to lose weight. Well, our bodies are storing that, right? So it's storing it and not burning it because it doesn't know when it's going to eat again. And so that was really, even though I read this 2 years ago, reading it again just made me think and realize that's why we eat a little a lot. And that's what I was told my whole life, eat a little a lot. And I just never did it. And if I would have done that and I would have made that habit, I wouldn't have had to battle it now. So anyway, that's just something that I really resonated with me this time.
Yeah. How many of you on here were in that same boat as Cher, where you only ate like once, maybe twice, and couldn't really understand why you were losing weight? Yeah, I see a few of you. Was it hard to transition to eating every few hours?
Well, I think it's counterintuitive to think you're going to eat more often and lose weight. But I think it only took me not even a full day to, at that 3-hour point, start feeling hungry, which I thought was so weird that happened so quick.
Yeah, I like to tell people that we're like resetting our bodies to like factory settings, which this chapter actually talks a lot about that. Like this is how we were programmed, was to eat every few hours versus just eating once and expecting our bodies to use that, when really our body's like, well, I don't know when you're going to eat again, so I'm going to hold on to every single thing because there is no regular schedule. And yeah, it seems kind of backwards when you first start.
Cindy, for me, what resonated in the first couple pages was the supersized generation comments. And I actually didn't eat a lot of fast food when I was at my heaviest, but my portion sizes were such an issue. Like I was wondering, I was thinking to myself, I'm eating really healthy, but I was eating way too much. And so, it's still, when you go out to restaurants, you're like, oh my God, this is so much. So splitting a meal, I've just become more aware of how big our portions are when I eat out.
Yeah, kind of scary thinking about that. In fact, that's the one, I literally highlighted the whole paragraph on the top of page 43 about how irresponsible restaurants are with their servings and what that does to our body and how imbalanced it is. What else? Any other takeaways from these first few pages? Well, let's go on to like page 44. This was quite insightful because it was all about how the food industry sabotages our health, which is so scary, you guys, because we don't have a ton of, I mean, we have control, yes, but the whole chapter is about how we have little control about it. What were some big like aha moments or some scary facts that you guys read in these first couple pages on page 44?
How refined sugars are added to everything. I mean, that's really scary how sugar is everything. Like I think you posted it, Cindy, about how much sugar is added to ketchup.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of gross.
Which was more than a donut. And I was not promoting donuts, even though a lot of people commented and were like, oh, I guess I'll take the donut over ketchup. That wasn't the point of the post. But yes, it is in everything. And in fact, what was shocking to me was that it says that the corn syrup, like table sugar, is highly addictive and as addictive as cocaine. And that like terrified me, like thinking about how our brains get stimulated with it. And it's no wonder we crave it. Yeah, it's scary. Nobody? Is everybody just like skimming the chapter now as we're like going through this? That's okay if you're doing that too. The bottom of 45 talks about how sugar is not evil, and we were born with a preference for sweets. Did that catch anyone off guard? I had never really thought of that before reading it, or how even like breast milk is sweet. And that's basically why babies eat it, right? Like we're born with that intuition to just want it. Did that surprise anyone else, or was that just me?
I don't know if I realized that we were born to have that, but I do know, I remember raising my kids, and some of the things that they said was to try and feed them the vegetables or the savory items before you fed them fruit as babies, because otherwise, they would be less likely to eat the more savory items later on. So that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Elaine says in the comments there, I was thinking about how years ago going to the corner store was important. And now we have giant stores that provide us readily with all those things. Not only that, Elaine, but we used to walk to the corner store. Like my grandma used to send me walking to the corner store if she needed something. And now we have like all the other convenience like Instacart and DoorDash where everything comes to us, and that doesn't help either. Yeah, great takeaway. How about the fact that the kitchen has become the living room of the past? Is that where most of you hang out most of the day?
It's definitely like a pit stop. Everybody's gotta go through. It's such a central area. That section you're talking about, like what got me was on page 46, just this list of all the ways that fast food and these highly processed foods impact us. And if anybody who didn't read, like make sure to look over that. And if you're on plan, or if you've been through on the 5-in-1, like really pay attention to the things in here that you can point out that have been better. Like, are you in a better mood now that you're eating better? Are you having less stomach issues? Has your stomach acid issues decreased? We can't say that across the board, but that's what happens with a lot of folks when we start eating properly. So it's kind of interesting to read that and be like, oh yeah, like all these things that I used to eat habitually were really making me feel poorly, not just like long-term health effects, which we all are, we come pretty well versed in that, but like short-term, how I feel today, how I'm showing up today, how testy I am, or what kind of energy I have. Like all of this stuff is based on what we're fueling with.
I want to go back to Cindy's comment about the kitchen has become our living room of the past. If you think about how homes are built now, right? The kitchen is almost like part of the common space, the main space in your house. And I was thinking about that being at Cindy and Andrew's house this weekend, and thinking how my house is built in the last 3 that I've lived in. it's like that is part of the main space. So we're in our kitchens more. What are we going to do? We're going to go to those pantries. We're going to go grab those foods. And then I was reading here that that we eat most of our meals out. And in like 2010, it was, where was it? I just saw it and I kind of lost it. Oh, sorry. Now my dogs are going to start barking. But in 2010, 50% of the meals were eaten away from home. So that means we're eating more fast food since 2010. And that's just crazy because our kitchens are our main space when we're at home. And then we're stopping on the way home to get food to bring home that's not good for us. So anyway, just had to put that out there.
Right? Seems so like contradictory. In fact, I don't know if I was telling you this, Cher, I was telling someone else, but when we were building our home, I wanted an open floor plan because our old home that we had in Washington was built in 1920. So this also says something, but everything was very siloed. So it was like the living room was separate, the kitchen was separate, like everything was separate. And I'm like, well, maybe they were onto something where not everyone had to live in the kitchen altogether, although that is where we spend most of our time. And it's hard. I mean, how many of you typically, don't love cooking, and fast food or restaurants is just kind of your go-to? Is that kind of a thing, or do most of you eat at home pretty commonly?
Oh. I used to eat out all the time. I mean, honestly, it would be a thing that I would go, and I work from home. So I have to leave the house to go get food because I didn't want to cook it. I didn't want to clean up the mess and I didn't want to cook. And I will say now, being on plan, that's shifted a lot because I know that I can cook healthier and simple, healthy meals, right? I mean, how many of us realize that eating healthy is not as hard as we were making it? I know it was me. I was a big, firm believer. I can't eat healthy because it's going to take too much time. So.
Yeah, Sharon, I think I posted something like that last night too, right? Because the salmon meal that I make is like less than 10 minutes to cook it, right? It takes me longer than that to go to a restaurant. Then you have to wait and sit and, and it's simple and it's easy. But back to the list too, like that Eric was talking about, like the one that struck me was the sodium piece. And I know they've been talking about that on the news a lot lately, where, the FDA wants to start cutting back on sodium in food, right? Because it's so bad. And I think about the fact that I lived on Advil almost every day because I had headaches all the time. And it was very likely because I didn't pay attention to sodium content. Like these days when I'm in the store and I'm looking at different things, like that's the one thing that like stands out to me a lot. I'm like, wow, look how much sodium is in that. Like, that's just crazy.
Yeah, I agree. So Teresa in the comments said she never ate at home before plan. And I think that's a norm for a lot of folks, including Andrew before he jumped on program. He was always eating fast food even before dinner. But that is really common. And it's part of what I love about this program is you're not having to make 6 meals for yourself. We can focus on one and we'll build on that later. But it's almost like, how many of us can juggle 6 balls at once? Not very many of us. And so it's nice to know that we have one meal we're focusing on that can be a healthy meal, quick and taste really good. And we don't have to worry about those other 5. On this list, though, that Eric pointed out, one that stood out to me for those of us that did eat a lot of fast food prior is that it can frequently spike our insulin. And that's super important for type 2 diabetics, right? Because you get those huge spikes and then the crashes, and regulating type 2 diabetes can be really challenging. But because of the convenience of it, and because, it's packed with stuff that our brain craves, sometimes it's the easiest thing to do. Did anyone on this call struggle giving up fast food when they started? Shauna, was that your hand that I see going up a little bit? Tell me a little bit about that. Was it the convenience or was it the taste?
I think both. I lead a very busy life, so just the convenience of running and just grabbing, and my family too. They love fast food as well, and they don't seem to put on weight, so it makes it where they can just eat and don't have which they do have the consequences, because if you read that list, I mean, there's a lot of bad things that they don't even realize is going on. But for them, the weight didn't come on as easily as it did for me. And I think I was addicted to a lot of the stuff that the salt, the trans fats, all that, it becomes addicting. So just breaking those habits. And I still have a hard time sometimes wanting the fast food. But like tonight, I'm learning new ways to create really healthy things at home. So I'm really excited. We made new stuff tonight. So
Yay, what'd you make?
we did some squash, and I had a London broil, which is a leaner type of the meat. And I just did that with just some squash and some not green beans, but I'll get it right in a minute. The other long green vegetable. I can't think right now, but yeah, it was really
Very
good.
good.
Just trying it. Yeah, just trying different stuff. I never was a squash fan, and so many different varieties of squash out there, and I'm really enjoying it. Asparagus. There we go. That's what I was trying to think of.
Thanks, Nikki. I think that's great. Yeah, and thanks for sharing. I think a lot of us, because of schedules and how convenient it is really easy to like DoorDash and even have fast food to come to our house. But I will tell you that chart, like that picture on page 48, I feel like all of us need this on our refrigerator or pantry door to remind us of the side effects of eating fast food. And I think the saddest part to me was the depression. And I think there's so many folks that they don't feel good and they're not necessarily linking it to what they're eating. They may be linking it to other things. But it's amazing. Like if we put this food in our body, it literally has a ripple effect from basically head to toe. And it was quite alarming to me. I don't know if it was for anyone else, but it was quite scary. Any other takeaways in this chapter? I know it was pretty big, so we can keep going and kind of talk about the patterns of diet and exercise and kind of move on the next few pages. But anything else stand out to anybody?
There's a couple of comments. Josh points out that the list made him think of the Super Size Me documentary and how that guy's health really took a nosedive in 30 days of eating nothing but McDonald's. Tina says she's a hockey mom with busy evening schedules for 3 boys, and it's hard to coordinate healthy dinners. We do drive through too much, and I try to eat at home between practices. Teresa broke into her box early because she was hungry. Yeah, you got to get your snacks going. But I totally agree with what Josh said. I mean, that's what this is all about. As for Tina, I got 4 kids myself. I totally get it. And I'm really trying to break that habit, or at least choose places that are much better, because the kids will always gravitate towards the worst thing on the menu. So even like a Subway versus McDonald's, you can still go very wrong at Subway, don't get me wrong, but generally speaking, there's some better choices there. And I just try to, McDonald's in particular, like we've almost made off limits. Like they were doing salads and they took them off. And that's not even McDonald's fault. Like they weren't selling. They're just not doing it. Like people want the things that they crave, that they used to bring them comfort. So with my kids, I really try to be intentional about that, because I know whatever I'm giving them is going to be their comfort food 10 years from now. So not that my kids never ate at McDonald's, and certainly not shaming anybody on that. We have had our share of McNuggets, but the time and the place, and they definitely know like this is not something that we can do all the time because of this. We're not trying to like set us on a path of poor health just for convenience. We need to be intentional what we're going to eat, planning ahead.
Completely agree. I want to make sure we have time to talk about kind of what we want to put into place this next week. But I also want to point out real quick on pages 50 and moving forward, how they talk about like today's medicine and how it's sort of like a Band-Aid. And for some of you on healthcare that work in healthcare, I'd love to hear your opinion on this, but they really are, it's like sick care versus healthcare, right? Like they're giving you the medications, but they're not solving the problem. Have any of you had experience with that firsthand, where you've been given a medication where you're like, now that you're on program, you don't need it anymore because your diet has improved, whether it's your cholesterol, your blood pressure, diabetes, anything along those lines? Have you guys had a positive experience?
I have. I'm diabetic, and so type 2. And when the whole reason I started Plan, I'll be honest, was because of my diabetes. I was told I was going to go on insulin. they gave me 6 weeks to turn it around, and I did. So because I turned it around, they took me off of 2 medications, didn't put me on insulin. I still take 2, one's every week and one is every day, but I still think that's a big win because I went from 3 medications, possibly insulin every day, to 1 and once a week and 1 every day. So in my world, big win.
That's huge. Anyone else?
I came off 3 blood pressure medicines after I had been on program for about 2 or 3 months. And reading what they said about the healthcare, it was a reminder, I would go to the doctor and they'd just pile on more medication. And I mean, they would mention my weight, but it really didn't seem to them as concerning as what it really was. Like, instead, they just kept giving me the medicine. So thankfully, this program helped me to come off of that because a lot of it was weight related.
I love that. Josh, were you going to say something?
Yeah, for me, I was taking acid reflux medicines, blood pressure, and cholesterol. And actually, funny thing, wasn't even planned, but when I first started, I actually already had a health checkup 1 month after, already scheduled after starting program. So as soon as I was 1 month in, they already said, you can actually stop taking these medicines. So 1 month in, I was like, no blood pressure medicine, no cholesterol, and I wasn't having issues with the acid reflux. And my inflammation was actually down too. That's the other thing I'm trying to remember. So 5 pills. I actually posted that recently. It's still going strong.
It's amazing how our bodies can heal ourselves from the inside out if we are properly fueling it. And the most impressive part of this chapter for me, because I was 1,000% guilty of it, is trying to outrun my fork. Who learned something new about diet versus exercise that you're willing to share? Or even if you were one of those people too who thought, well, I can eat at McDonald's if it means I just ran 5 miles. That was like my reward in the past. I see a lot of head nods. Are a lot of you in that boat? Anybody learn anything that kind of surprised them, that maybe it changed your thought process around outrunning your fork?
I don't know if this will fit into that, but actually tonight I was actually at the grocery store and, trying to find, because I'm on 3 and 3 now, so I can add in a little bit of cereal. And I was trying to find something that would fit into the unsweetened cereal plans. And, you're looking, I didn't think about it before. Like, well, this says it's a healthy cereal. But when you start looking at the nutrition facts, you find out that's not true. There's a lot of sodium, a lot of sugars, a lot of carbs, and it's like, put that back really quick. That's just my thought on that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you're paying attention to labels. Elaine in the comments said, most companies today do not consider trying to reduce stress, and stress makes some people eat and try to reduce anxiety. Absolutely. I tell people all the time, food's not the issue. It's why we go to food that's the issue, right? Like everything in moderation, but what are we trying to cope with? And sometimes we think food is a healthier coping mechanism, but reading this chapter and seeing how addictive even sugar is, it really isn't the best coping mechanism. And on the bottom of page 54, sad fact, because of the increasing rates of obesity, unhealthy eating habits, and physical inactivity, we may be the first generation that will see a shorter life expectancy than their parents, which is really sad. Like, it makes me want to make sure we're leaving our kids better off than we were. So in these last few minutes, I'd love to hear what you guys are going to do this week. Taking everything you learned in this chapter, what are you going to do differently or be more aware of, at least, as we move forward into the week?
I had to get back to being really good about meal prepping again, because I get so incredibly busy, and then it just seems so easy to run through the drive-thru, and I have like all the intentions of getting something at least close to a lean and green or something at least, and then it's like, well, we're already here, might as well add the Diet Coke, which I try to avoid personally, or we might as well grab like a small Mexi fry, because that sounds good too. But when I do meal prep and I can just pop something out at the end of the day, it it sets me up, like it's that whole fail to plan to fail thing. So I can set myself up for success or failure. It's up to me. But if I don't take the time out to do something I don't want to do right now, then long term, I'm going to do something I don't want to do by default. And I don't like that. So I'd rather choose the thing I didn't want to do, because it's like choose your hard. My hard's either going to be it's hard to buckle an airplane seat, or it's hard to prep all of this food because I really just want to sit on the couch and do nothing. So this is the hard I choose today.
I love that. Choose your hard. That meal prepping is a really big deal. Elaine just had a brilliant idea that she shared, and I really hope everybody does something very similar. But she said this year for Halloween, she bought pencils with Halloween erasers on top to give out instead of candy this year. What a great way to make sure you avoid temptation around you when you have all the little trick-or-treaters come to your house. Anybody else doing something similar or have a different idea of what you can hand out versus the gobs and gobs of candy? No other ideas, you guys? I see a lot of moms on this call. I know
that reminds me of a time that, I mean, not since I started this program, but one time I put toothpicks in the Easter eggs. The kids were super mad.
Oh my gosh, Shannon, you crack me up. Don't put toothpicks necessarily.
I also put carrots and broccoli because it was an Easter Sunday that was April Fool's Day, so it was pretty funny.
That is hilarious. Any other ideas? I totally forgot that Halloween was this weekend. What are your healthy plans for Halloween? If you guys are going to a Halloween party, what are you bringing that can keep you on plan? And if you're handing out stuff, what are some other ideas outside of candy? Who wants to share?
Tokens from the local arcade. You can get a lot of them. And you can still hand it out like candy.
Oh, I love that idea. Mm-hmm.
There's actually a neighborhood. We used to take my niece and nephews when they're still trick-or-treating. They would actually, if they run out of candy, they would actually hand out cash. So I don't know if that's a good idea.
Pennies, dollars? What were you getting, Josh?
Where do you live?
Right?
They were handing out like
What's your address?
5s and 10s and 20s.
Specifically.
I got some high rollers in your neighborhood, Josh. Any other ideas, like fun potluck ideas that folks can take to work as you guys might be having potluck parties? I don't even know if that's a thing with COVID these days, or just general party ideas that you guys can share.
I'm going to go to a party city. My friends have a super fun party every year. And last year I was on 5 and 1. So this year I'm almost 4 and 2. But I'm just going to bring a big salad with healthy protein. I make a really healthy taco salad. So I'll bring that, and everyone's always really excited, and I'll just avoid the pizza. My husband stays behind the house and we'll hand out some candy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, good. Well, if you guys have any other ideas, feel free to pop them in the chat. Nikki said, in regards to prepping, I prep for a couple days at a time. When I'm already making something, it helps to make it feel less time consuming. I agree. Being able to prep more than just one meal, multiple meals for the week, or freezing some is really helpful. That way you can sometimes even pop something out of the freezer on the nights that you don't want to cook. Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, I'm going to let Erica take it over so that she can do the raffle. And then hopefully next week, when we do talk about the life book, maybe we can debrief a little bit and see how Halloween went and what you guys ended up doing that was really successful. All right, Erica, my friend, take it over.
All right, here we go.
Yay, Patty! Congrats, my friend. Oh, Madison, that makes me happy. Congrats to you as well. That's awesome. Well, cool, you guys. Well, have an amazing rest of your week. Definitely make sure you go into Halloween this weekend with a plan. I always tell folks that the worst thing you could do is go into a holiday weekend, whether you celebrate or not, without having a plan, because it can be really challenging in the moment if you haven't really been thoughtful about what you plan on doing, especially if you're going to a potluck or something. So can't wait to chat with you guys next week. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll chat later. Bye, everybody.